Hello, my reading friends. It feels like it has been forever since I've sat down to talk with you. I have so much to share with you. I have been from Canada to Arkansas, from north to south in the last few weeks, and I've had some really great family time that I needed to just get away from things for a little bit, but I am refreshed, I feel renewed, and I am here to chat about some books with you today. I do have some used book shopping planned coming up ahead, and I was wondering, would you be interested in me sort of filming the process of going out to libraries and hunting for used books? Is that something that you're interested in seeing? If so, let me know down in the comments, and I would be more than happy to film when I go out and kind of let you know what it looks like in my area that I go to do my shopping at. Today, let's talk about 5 historical fiction books that I have already reread and I definitely will reread in the future. There's those books that just touch you in some way, and if you read a lot of books, maybe this will make sense to you that you have books that you really enjoy, but they don't always stay with you. So maybe somebody mentions it or you see it somewhere again, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that book, but you don't remember the specifics of the story. And then I find there are those books that just leave an imprint on your soul. They are with you forever. They are a part of you. They come back to you at different times. You remember scenes. They are just a part of you once you read them. And you enjoy going back to those books and revisiting them. It's a comfort read. It sparks something inside of you. These are 5 books that do just that for me. They are all focused on women in history and women that have a little bit of a unique situation or a unique life experiences out of the norm of the time period that they are in. And I really love reading stories that are like that. So the first one that I have is the book Becoming Mrs. Lewis. This book, I feel like it's definitely about the woman, but it would not have sold as well, I think, if they didn't have the C.S. Lewis aspect added into it. So we meet Joy. She has a very turbulent life going on at the time, and she starts writing to C.S. Lewis, who I believe she calls Jack, is what she knows him as. There's so many twists and turns in this book that happened. Her life is not normal by any stretch, and I thought it was just a beautiful story of someone living their life, and there's definitely parts that might seem hard to take in, and the choices that she made might not be the choices that everyone would make, but it was a really interesting read. Very, very much enjoyed this book. Oh, I should continue with, I did start reading the first paragraph of the books, and someone did comment that they really enjoyed that because it gives you a sense of the writing style. So I will go ahead and do that. And this one. The world, it changes in an instant. I've seen it over and over. The way in which people forge through the days believing that they have it all figured out, protected inside a safe life. Yet there is no figuring life out, or not in any way that protects us from the tragedies of the heart. I should have known this by now. I should have been prepared. So that is Becoming Mrs. Lewis by Patty Callahan. Next, I have a book that I was so excited when I saw it was going to be released. It did not disappoint, and that is The Second Mrs. Esther by Shana Abe. This book is so good. I'm really fascinated by all things Titanic, and so when I saw this one, I was so intrigued. It is about the life of Madeline Talmadge Force, who is 17 years old, and she meets John Jacob Astor, who is, I believe, newly divorced at the time of their meeting and in his early 40s. So it's definitely an age gap romance, but I found it to be romantic, heartbreaking, and all things in between. If you enjoy Titanic, if you enjoy reading about that early 1900s time period, I definitely think you would enjoy The Second Mrs. Astor. The next book in my stack here is The Engineer's Wife. This is a bit of a melancholy read. It's not a happy love story, but it really does give you a sense of a woman who is kind of trying to find her way in this time period that is not very accommodating to women. And she wants to use her brain for something, and she has the capabilities of being so much more, but what walls are there that she comes up to as she's trying to pave her own place in the world. This is based on the true story of the woman who built the Brooklyn Bridge, a very famous bridge here in the United States, in New York. And it's just a fantastic story that really gives you a sense of all that went into the building of the bridge back then. I found that part of it really fascinating. It is set post Civil War, so her husband had served in the Civil War and had issues of his own going on. So you really get this sense of everything that is happening in her life and all the things that she is trying to deal with and still move forward and make a way for herself. I just remembered I did forget to read the first paragraph of the second Mrs. Esther. So before I get too far ahead of myself, let me go back and do that. All right, this is the second Mrs. Esther. The first time she saw him, she was essentially invisible. 13 years old, a schoolgirl on holiday, her hair dripping from the sea, sleek, wet mermaid curls clinging to her arms and back. She was nestled, legs tucked under her, in the coarse silvery sand of Bailey's beach, her ruffled cap tossed beside her. Her nose was tingling hot, and she didn't care because it was breezy and warm. The sun was a high, glorious pinpoint, and if it were ladylike in the least to stretch out all the way in her bathing costume to make a sand angel, she would have. That gives you a little taste of that. And now I will read the first paragraph from The Engineer's Wife. The light, sweet honey scent of burning candles did not quite mask the odor of blood and sweat in the makeshift ballroom. Not far from the White House, the room was tucked inside a military hospital, itself a repurposed clothing factory. Noise echoed in the vast space, with cots, machinery, and great rolls of cotton neatly stacked against the walls. Tall windows let in slanted rectangles of light upon women in dark uniforms setting out flower arrangements. I felt out of place. Dressed in a ball gown, I was like a fresh flower in a room meant for working men. Right, and we have two left here. So the next is the perfect fall read. So if you are starting to gather your fall TBR, this is a book that I would highly recommend you add to it. And it is Mrs. Poe by Lynn Cullen. I adore this book. I really enjoy the dark vibes of Edgar Allan Poe, and Mrs. Poe does not disappoint. So this is about the woman who is married woman at the time, and Edgar Allan Poe is married to his cousin. I don't think it was second cousin. It's been a little while since I read this, but I think it's first cousin. So there's a little bit of history going on there. But they meet, and there's kind of that obsession sort of thing going on between the two of them. I won't get into it too much, but it is fantastic, full of twists, and will keep you reading. The first paragraph of this. When given bad news, most women of my station can afford to slump onto their divans, their china cups slipping from their fingers to the carpet, their hair falling prettily from its pins, their 14 starched petticoats compacting with a plush crunch. I am not one of them. As a lady whose husband is so busy painting portraits of wealthy patrons, most of whom happen to be women, that he forgets that he has a family, I have more in common with the girls who troll the muddy streets of Corlear's Hook, looking to part sailors from their dollars, than I do with the ladies of my class, in spite of my appearance. And the last book is Bronte's Mistress. I feel like this has very similar vibes to Mrs. Poe. It could also make a great fall read. This is the story of the Bronte sisters' brother and his going away to teach and affair with the married wife, head of the household, and everything that comes with that. It is a very interesting story. I think Finola Austin did an amazing job with this, and I would highly, highly recommend it. So let me read to you the first paragraph from this. Already a widow in all but name, fitting that I must yet again wear black. Nobody had greeted me on my return, but Marshall at least had thought of me. She lit a feeble fire in my dressing room and laid out fresh mourning in the bedroom, spectral against the white sheets. I smoothed out a pleat, fingered a hole in the veil. Just a year since I'd last set these clothes aside, and now death had returned, like an unexpected, if unwanted visitor this time, not a violent thief in the night. What a homecoming! No husband at the door, no children running down the drive. That gives you a little sense of Bronte's Mistress. What are your books that you just cannot get enough of, that you love to reread? I think it's really interesting to see what books we choose to go back to, what provides us comfort, entertainment. There's so many reasons to reread books. And it's such a fun part of reading that we get to revisit them over and over. I am planning on getting lots of reading, hopefully in for August. We will see how the month turns out. July was a bit all over the place for me. I'll see if I can get my reading list together and maybe do a recap of that. If you have not joined us over in the community space, I will leave the link down below so you can feel free to check that out. Thank you again for hanging out with me and watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day reading. Take care. Happy reading. Bye.